Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. This is Bryce. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing. If this is something you end up enjoying, you never know, it could happen. Hey, today is Tuesday Reviews Day. That's what we're going to try to stick with, at least as long as most New Year's resolutions last, right? No, I'm hoping to go do better. This is my review for The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. That's book 1 in the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. Of course, you know all that. He's essentially the godfather of all things fantasy, and that's pretty much why I'm even here right now. So, having said that, I'm a bit biased, you could maybe tell. This is my 4th time reading, so, and actually twice in the last year is what ended up happening. But I have no regrets. It was just as magical, just as amazing as it was the first time that I read this on the 4th time. So this is going to be no spoiler unless I give a spoiler warning, which there should just be very little of that. That's my goal here. More spoiler talk and discussion can be had in the Discord, which I will have a link in the description below. So anyway, without further ado, this is my new review guidelines at work here. First things first, the cover. I always look at the cover. You do judge a book by its cover, right? So The Fellowship of the Ring, I absolutely love this cover. This version I somehow snagged and I absolutely love it. I could not resist. This is actually the only, I've said this multiple times, but the only movie version of a book that I've ever loved as much as I have, and it's all 3 of these. So this is directly from the movie. It's amazing. Love the cover. I think it's brilliant. This is, you know, one of the best-selling books in the history of mankind. So it has like a bajillion covers. You can find a cover that is right for you. There's very minimalist ones. There's all kinds of detailed ones. There's beautiful ones. There's less than beautiful ones. I'll be honest, I like most of them, especially when they kind of use the Tolkien kind of script and some of his like runes and whatnot and Elvish writing, so I really do love that. But anyway, there's rarely a cover of this that is not great, other than maybe the movie versions are the movie versions, not my movie version, but the ones with people's faces on them. All right, a quick summary. This is number 2. Quick summary, we are talking your classic quest chosen one. This is pretty much what established the trope and made it something that so many others have followed over the years. This is a story about hobbits of all things. In this book, don't worry, it explains hobbits for you and their unique characteristics, their love of multiple meals, not just the usual 3.
What about breakfast?
We've already had it.
We've had one, yes. What about second breakfast?
And this kind of small, tiny, a people that is almost not even in existence to the rest of the world, who are tasked with the greatest task of all, and that is to defeat the Dark Lord, right? And so we have got the ring. That's why it's the Lord of the Rings. The ring was found in The Hobbit by Bilbo. His nephew Frodo inherits it. And guess what? This is going to link into my next thing, one of the quotes that I have. He's reticent. He's reluctant to take on this huge burden because the ring is itself one of the magic rings, and it's in fact the one ring to rule them all. And he is tasked with getting out of the Shire, getting out of his place, his home, out to the wide world, which hobbits don't do. That's not known for hobbits, except for Bilbo Baggins, who is related to Frodo, and to go get this out of the Dark One's hands. And that's what the Fellowship of the Ring is about. And I won't get into more that gets into spoilers, but if you don't know by now, really it follows the movie follows it pretty closely, skips over some things, and maybe that's a good video in and of itself, the comparisons to the movie, because one of the biggest ones is just how much time at the very beginning is spent in the Shire before anyone actually leaves to go on any journey. There's a lot of waiting and preparing to go. And Gandalf, even in the movies, it makes it look like maybe a couple days, but we're talking like 20 years pretty much passes from the time that they discover what they have till the time that they actually leave, which you find out in this world, 20 years isn't so much time, especially when you have elves that live forever. A quote. Number 3, I like to get into the quotes. This is one that I love seeing out and about in the world. I don't know if everyone knows what they have on the back of their Jeeps. Usually that's where you find this quote, but I love this quote dearly. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. I love it. There's a lot more than just the not all who wander are lost. I do love that part of it, but there's more meaning to it, and I love it. I also wanted to quote, as I alluded to earlier, Frodo talking to Gandalf at the very beginning of the book, and which is funny because I think this actually takes place in the movie much further on, more like in the Mines of Moria, but I could be wrong here. Frodo, I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. I love that. I think it's so great. It's so epic. Speaking of that, I'll jump I didn't add this into my rubric for how I was going to do reviews from now on, but an audiobook, speaking of audiobook, I actually listened to the audiobook narrated by Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum himself, and it is so well done. It's insane. There's a couple of little minor, like, odd pauses here and there, but honestly, it's pretty normal. You're going to get some weird things that just when you've recorded this much, some little weird overlap or stuff, but it's better. I've listened to the Rob Inglis version, which is also great. I think Inglis does maybe do a better job on all the songs and poetry in it, but Serkis does a great job with that, but also his voices are just so good. And I mean, he does the perfect Gollum voice, which is the one in the movie. So it's incredible. Highly recommended just to find this version of it. Then number 4, I wanted to get into my likes and dislikes. This again lets me kind of skirt over having to get into too much spoiler detail, but I will warn you if I do have that, if there is any spoiler. Likes first. So many things. This was hard to contain because I want to put in everything, and I could just one of the things it's so well written, and Tolkien's a linguist, right? And that's how he studied. It's essentially was like, I created these Elvish language and the dwarf language, and they needed, something to put them in, like a book. But I mean, he's done such a good job. The foreshadowing in this is just really, really well done, and what's needed where and why, and it's just it just all works so well. There's not really any big what, and I know you can go, and I can go into why we didn't just use the eagles. I'm happy to go into that. It's all just kind of in there and really well set up so that everything makes logical sense, even though it is a fantasy book. But I think one of the biggest likes that I have for this book is just you feel like you're part of this. You get to know these characters, and you feel like you're in it. You're with them. You're along for the ride, the fellowship, the even just the friends that are the Hobbit friends.
Zach, we're still in the Shire. What could possibly happen?
And you're fearful for them, for their safety, and you don't trust people, and you're still waiting for Gandalf for a long time at first, and but they just really, you get close to them and you really respect them. I feel like that's one of those things that this is one of those, it's an adventure that not only is Frodo doing the right thing, right, to get out of his comfort zone and to go on this quest to take care of this ring, and to take it to maybe, at least at first, those who could maybe do something with it to keep it safe and keep it secret, get it to the right place. But he, and he steps up to it, even though he would rather it not be him. He still steps up and does it. I like that the friends step up and are like, I'm not going to let you do this alone. I'm going to go with you. Sam maybe is compelled to at first by Gandalf, but Merry and Pippin, they're just going, you're going, I'm going. Why wouldn't I? I'm here to help you. That's what I came along for, and I'll do it till the end. And I love that sentiment. I mean, that is true friendship and true love. And speaking of that, I love that this can be like about love, but not necessarily about romance. And it's like, because there's so much, especially these days, I feel like this just, you got to have that romance and whatever. And, but this just has some great relationships where you get from, you know, elves and dwarves hate each other. They despise each other. They've had a history, right? A very long history of bad things that have been done, that at least in their minds that have been done by the other party. To just see this relationship grow between Legolas and Gimli is so great. I love it. You know, it's not enemies to lovers, but it's enemies to friends trope, and I love it. Not to mention Frodo and Sam, and anyway, just it's so brilliant. I just love that part. I mean, this world is just so, it's got so much magic to it. It's such a well-painted canvas, I guess. You feel like you're really just deposited in it. This is one of the reasons why this stayed my favorite book of all time, or book series of all time, because I had never found anything that I was this immersed in this world. That's what I love about it. Is and a lot of people skip the poems, skip the songs. I feel like it brings you some more of the history, some more just into this world. Look, there's even this thing, because of course they don't have TV, they don't have audiobooks, they don't have the entertainment we have. What did they have? They had songs, and that's going to be important to them. They're singing it along the trail, or it reminds them of something, and they've got to sing this song because it mentions, this ancient song mentions this part of the world, or whatever it may be, but that really brings you into the world and makes you feel part of it. And then this time through, I really, it hit me with Boromir. Boromir hit me, and this is a bit of a spoiler here. Boromir, I always loved Sean Bean anyway, in the movies. So, but Boromir, I really loved his character. I feel like he is such a good guy. He is just as honorable as everyone else. And the main like difference is just that he doesn't quite understand why everyone's making a big fuss about, hey, there's this ring of power. It's a very powerful ring. It's supposed to be the most powerful one. Why wouldn't we just use it? And not quite understanding why that just doesn't work. And of course, it would take a while to really understand, like, why would we do this? Why does this make sense to just go destroy it when we could just use it and win? And that's his whole thing, is just like, why wouldn't it? He obviously is the most human of the bunch. He is human. He's the kind of representative of the human race. Boromir is just such a human thing, and this is where that spoiler comes in, where he succumbs to the ring, which, as we know, if you know this at all, of course you do, that there's, you know, other people succumb to the ring. Great people. One of our favorite characters probably succumbs to the ring eventually. And obviously Gollum did. And to have him very early on there succumb to the ring, so that Frodo then eventually learns, like, oh, I can't trust anyone right now because they're all going to be pulled into this evil. So you can't really blame Boromir so much for succumbing to it, because I mean, it just made sense with his world philosophy, but also that it's pulling him in. It's trying to distort everything. But as soon as he found out that was wrong, that's the wrong way to go, he did everything he could to protect his friends. He stood up, he did the right thing. And that's, I mean, what more of a human thing can we have than to go, look, I made a mistake, but instead of running away and hiding from it, I'm going to step up and do the right thing. Even if I'll take on the shame. I mean, what a brave thing to do. Take on the worst things, you know, but still go on and do the right thing. I just think, I don't know, I loved Boromir a whole lot more than I ever had in this read through. I absolutely love Gimli and his attachment, this is also under the spoiler, and his attachment to the Lady of the Wood, Galadriel, you know, the Lady of Lothlorien. It was explained to me in something, and I forget what I was reading, but I thought it was well explained, that essentially Galadriel wouldn't even give one of her hairs to one of the elves, the elf princes, and it's been a while since I've read the Silmarillion now. Essentially wouldn't give one of her hairs, but gives 3 hairs to Gimli, being so impressed with just how he respected and treated the elves, and then his going forward and not taking any disrespect whatsoever. And obviously that's spoiler for even the next book. Sorry, not a huge spoiler. And a spoiler. Okay, now my dislikes, I'll be honest, it's very little. Mostly it's like dislikes of some of the memes. Like one of the memes is like, oh, Tolkien just loves to describe trees, and he'll just go on and on and on. I'll be honest, on my fourth rereading, I mean, some of the like things that maybe I would have thought earlier were not as great. It all becomes like something that I love. So maybe that's part of the problem. But really what you look at is any kind of description of the land, the trees and everything, is it pulls you into the story that much more. It pulls you into this world that you're walking through, and it's not that much. It's just not. It's just, he describes some trees, sure, but you're like, because it's a different forest than the other forest. There's like the old forest, there's the Fangorn forest, there's all kinds of different forests. They're different forests and they have different kinds of trees and whatnot. It makes sense. And again, that kind of idea of like opening up this world and expanding the world, it's good world building, frankly. And maybe if I really have to pull a dislike, because I made my bed here, maybe it's just that there's not as much magic, as I maybe like in my fantasy, which I like a healthy amount. I also like my low fantasy, A Song of Ice and Fires, but really there's a good amount of magic, but it's not like overtly explained. It's very, what can Gandalf really do? The magic of kind of like the forests, the magic of Tom Bombadil, right? All right. Then I wanted to get into, if you liked this book, then you would like this other book. Now, this being the grandfather of fantasy, the grandfather series of fantasy, it's pretty much most fantasy that kind of springs at least to some degree from this. But if you like kind of the same kind of like, chosen one or lowly character becomes, larger than life or whatever, you're talking David Eddings' Belgariad or Malorian, the Raymond E. Feist Magician series, or the Midkemia, the whole series. Of course, The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks. That's, the one that's clearly like most linked to it. Aragon even. And I think maybe my best recommendation might be Rhaenyra Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. Just for the fact that I like how Rhaenyra series, it kind of uses some of these classic like fantasy elements, elves, dwarves, those kinds of things, like kind of set in a similar type world, but with more like modern kind of sensibilities and sense of writing, and much quicker, if you like that kind of quicker pace, but maybe like you still like the big tropes of fantasy. All right, then my rating. Finalize this with a rating. It's a 10 out of 10. It's an easy 10 out of 10. This series landed in my top 2 of my top 100 fantasy books, so I think it's up there. It was one that I didn't think would ever be surpassed, and only one series has been able to surpass it in all my reading, because this is just brilliant. I have a friend that reads this every single year, rereads the whole series. And I'm clearly getting there myself, but it's so magical. The movies, like, I know Christopher Tolkien, the son of J.R. Tolkien, didn't love the movies. I feel like the way people who are close to the story or who wrote the books or whatever, typically they'll not like the movie that's created. But I go, look, first of all, it could be worse. You could have, as I mentioned, an Aragon type movie where everyone generally just despises it. Or you could have what, at least, maybe they didn't get everything perfect from the book, but the Peter Jackson trilogy for The Lord of the Rings is highly regarded, well regarded, and isn't that enough to be happy with? It's set on the same level, I feel like, as a movie as the book is to other books. I think that's about as much as you can hope for in any kind of different kind of medium than the book. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. But anyway, easy 10 out of 10. One of my favorite trilogies of all time, one of my favorite books of all time. Just The Fellowship is great. Given whatever one I've recently read, I find it hard to pick a favorite. I typically go with The Two Towers, I think, as a favorite. But this was such a good read through. This one's going to be fighting for it. They're all such a high level. change them around anyway. Go read if you haven't. Fellowship of the Ring. It's where it all began. It is a little slower paced. But it's just magical, and you're there for the journey, I say, or be there for the journey. That really helps. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing, and we'll catch you later. Bye.